All right. What's up, Blueprint family? How y'all doing tonight? Thank you all for joining us. So tonight's topic is the impact of work on your libido. So why are we discussing this?
Yeah, it's a common question. In particular, men, it's more common to hear it. Although I have heard it from women before. It's not as common though with women, but men often complain about their woman's libido not being as high as it once was. And this particular question is actually in reference to that. I'm gonna hold on. Sorry.
And another reason why we're talking about this too is because of I think we all have heard of sexless marriages.
Yeah.
Something to take in consideration is the fact that some data and some statistics that we're going into involving people who work and showing what that information can provide to us or reveal rather about people who work versus or mainly women. I believe women who work versus women who don't. And this may shed some light on maybe sexless marriages or why you may have started a relationship or a marriage and understand that you've had more sex in the beginning than now. So this may help shed light on that. It could be a multitude of reasons.
Yeah.
But here we're going to look at work.
Yeah. And in particular, when you're talking about work, we're saying some women who work outside the home, how studies have shown, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but just how studies have shown there's added stress that comes along with that, but also a little bit related to working inside the home and being like a stay-at-home wife or stay-at-home mom, and working in those roles can also be as stressful and can inhibit a woman's libido. So it's just kind of taking a look at the data and what that says, and kind of how this can be used to help this young man, because he is a young man, they're in their 20s. So like you were
That's
saying,
early.
it's a lot of reasons, that we are going to get into for why your libido could not be as strong as it used to. But in particular, with them being young, we're going to explore a lot more reasonings that have a little less to do with age.
Yep. And before we start, as we normally, as I've been recently saying, if you can please like, share, and subscribe these videos, we really appreciate it. Subscribe on YouTube, Instagram, and then also on our Facebook. And then also too, we're starting to monetize on our Facebook page. Thank you. And share some stars with us. If you don't know about the star program, just look it up. But it's exciting for us. We're finally monetizing somewhere, and that's cool. So
Yeah.
appreciate you all for joining us and viewing our videos.
Yeah.
So let's begin.
Yep. Okay, so before this video, I drank some juice, and when it goes down the wrong pipe, so I'm kind of dealing with the the aftermath of getting it together. So sorry, guys, I cleared my throat.
You want me to read, honey?
It's Troy, if you want to, yeah.
All right. So the subject: advice for wife low sex drive.
Yeah.
So we've been married for 3 years in our 20s. In our 20s, I'm sorry. We have kids, and every time I try to initiate, she's more than often turns me down. A lot of time she will not initiate or do anything. Over the years, it stayed like this. Sometimes we'll have sex twice a week. Mostly it's once a month now. But we'll also go months on end with no sex. That's too early for being it. It's gotten to the point where I feel so defeated when I try to initiate. She does work a lot. Usually when I get home, I make dinner and put kids to bed. I don't know what more I can do while working. It just sucks because I have such a high sex drive, and hers is mostly non-existent. I've talked to her about this many times, and she says she just doesn't get in the mood often, or that she's stressed. I'd just like some advice on how to fix this. I love her. It's just so frustrating to only have sex once a month.
Mhm.
When we're this young. Yes, she's getting off multiple times each time we have it, but the sex isn't bad. It's great. Wow. Okay.
Way to end on a positive note. Well, I mean, that's a good thing to point out, I think, in particular, because it's actually encouraged for if your woman is having, in particular with women, if they're having a lower libido, for
Yeah.
them to get off, as he puts it, more often, because it does increase a chance, more likelihood of the hormones, it's, stimulating an arousal more often than not for the next time. And, especially if it stays on her mind and such and stuff. So that's good that he, takes note of that for when they are actually engaging in sexual intercourse. But yeah, let's head on back to the beginning of this letter, because we didn't mention, but Instagram, we do have the letter up on YouTube, and we have a whole different experience on YouTube if you want to join us up there. But either way, we're glad to have you.
Yep.
So
they've been married for 3 years. That's perfect. They're in their early 20s.
yeah,
Okay. And what
kids, yeah.
Yep. And like he said, they're too young to be doing that. He tries to initiate sex, and he gets turned and often turns me down. And then understand this for men. Men do not like to be turned down for sex, especially in a married situation. It is defeating, like he said.
Yeah.
To the point to where you don't even want to ask.
Yeah.
Or you just don't even worry about it.
Yeah, and those feelings can be very damaging to the self-esteem of a man, that can actually really lead to other problems in other areas of his life.
Work performance, things like that nature.
Yeah, just it rolling over. It can even cause like depression, anxiety, low self-confidence, withdrawal from, usual activities that he would like doing. He's withdrawing. Of course, you mentioned problems at work. That's a big one, because his performance, that can be affected. And some other things like, relationship problems in general, just maybe being a little more confrontational, needing that sexual release can cause you to be a little more angry, a little harder to keep your cool, or,
aggressive.
Yeah. Just because you need that release. Like, that is a natural part of everyone in general, but in particular for men, that can really be damaging for the self-esteem. So it's important that we do make note that women, that these are legit risks for that you need to take in consideration when you are looking at the full picture of, all right, I may be, tired or whatever reasons we'll get into later, but I'm not going to allow these reasons to kind of have a habitual cycle or affect the relationship, because it really can have a larger impact than what you would normally think overall. So it's just important to note that. But a lot of the times she will not initiate or do anything. Again, that's, of course, could be personal. Sometimes women can be a little shy about stuff like that.
My whole thing is this: why y'all ain't talk about it? I mean,
Well, he said they did. I do remember that. He says we have talked about it.
Okay.
So if you do want to, over the years, I do want to mention, because I do talk about this in my wife economics course as a preventive measure, especially when it comes to women understanding just the importance of sex in a relationship. In this letter, he mentions that they'll have sex twice a week, which, and believe it or not, twice a week isn't as not common, especially when you're introducing children, depending on the age of the children, whether or not, she's going through other issues, hormonal issues, or anything like that during that time of the month, or working hard. Twice a week isn't as abnormal, but there are studies that have shown the connection between something as little as not having sex more than 3 times a week can cause little arguments, walking on kind of eggshells, a little anxiety. So just something as small as studies said 3 times a week, they're down to like 2 times a week. And then when you get down to once a month, believe it or not, that more studies have shown that's even showing the cycle getting closer and closer to a further separation. So I always encourage wives to never try to let your sexual intercourse fall too low behind, too small behind 2 times a week. I know that may seem daunting, I guess, for some women, but if you just understand the connection of how important it is to keep this connection going. Yeah, and sustain the intimacy. And we're going to talk about some ways later on how you can actually help to increase this between both the man and the woman, because this may seem like a huge problem, but it's really not, especially once you get the talking and actually working towards solutions and not just so much focusing on the problem. But yeah, I did want to just bring
it is
up.
a big problem though.
Yeah, it is. It is. But it's not unsolvable.
Right. It's not unsolvable.
Yeah, and there's a lot of workarounds of it. Yeah.
You have to be committed to it.
Yeah.
So, he makes the dinners and put kids to bed. That means that she is worn out.
Right.
To be honest with you, if she's working, I don't know what she does for work. But my goodness, I mean, he works too, and he has to make dinner and put the kids to bed.
Right. And that's how we get here. How work really does affect, your libido. And that's important to note, in particular for cases like this, where she seems to be really overworked to where, the husband is even having to take up a huge amount of the slack. Now, not saying that these things shouldn't be split anyway, but, sometimes in situations like these, it's not always 50-50. In a case like this, I guess maybe she's going through something a little more. I think he does. We're going to get to that part, but where he mentions like she's doesn't get in the mood often, or that she's stressed right here. So that's probably the biggest. Yeah.
She's overworked.
Yeah. The biggest. Now we're going to go into a few studies that have shown the connection between women working outside the house and having a lower sex drive. So one study in particular, published in the journal Archives of Sexual Behavior, found that women who worked full-time were more likely to report a low sexual desire than women who did not work outside the home. And the study's authors suggested that this may be caused because working full-time can lead to increased stress and fatigue, which in turn leads to lower sexual desire. So the correlation kind of seems pretty obvious, and you really see it being played out in this relationship in particular. You take on the added stress of kids and just regular day-to-day life, and depending on how long ago she had kids, she may still have hormones involved. They often say that it takes up to about a year after a woman has given birth for her hormones to even kill out to where she's used to herself again, in a way, after the drop of pregnancy hormones and stuff. So that plays a huge part as well. Did you want to see the other one?
Yeah, sure.
Well, it was another study that showed an association between working outside of the house and lower sexual desires, but it did not prove that working outside the house causes the lower sexual desire, but it was the lack of leisure time, stress fatigue, and all of those other factors, again, just showing how working outside the home or working in general. Now,
well, what it's more so saying is that it's not working per se.
Yeah.
It's the other factors that come along with it. Mm-hmm. The stress, fatigue, lack of leisure time, enjoying yourself. Yeah. Possibly too the lack of sleep. The lack of sleep will definitely lower your libido as far as your sexual desires go.
Yeah.
So if you couple all of that, and this woman is probably doing all of those, and she's stressed out, she's not going to want to have sex.
Right.
That's just the fact of the matter.
Right. And that's just the reality of a situation when it comes to even this, the kind of 50-50 ideology and that some relationships carry, which is fine because, not everyone can afford to stay at home. So it's very realistic to happen. But, it's just something to consider that men also have to consider when their wives are outside of the home.
Right. That's the reason why I encourage men to retire their wives. So that makes you a happier man. You all are able to have sex more often. You can lower her stress levels as well.
Yeah.
If you are able to retire your wife, it will pay off too in the long run, especially if she's resourceful. She cooks, she cleans, she help take care of the children, or what have you. But this may be the key and the answer to those men out there who are in sexless marriages. Your wife will probably be more happy and less stressed depending on how many children you have and whether they go to school or not, or if she's homeschooling them. But that is just the data that's out there. That's what it shows, is that people who are having these levels of stress and fatigue are not readily available to have sex.
Yeah. And unfortunately, like we said, it's not always like super easy to just go and retire your wife. So there is going to require you guys having this conversation about what you all can do. Now, I did want to point out though that you did mention about stay-at-home wives. Well, I was not able to find any scientific evidence. I love to being able to actually dig and see any studies available outside of, our perspective, but just really any published studies that have studied and seen any results or effects of this. But what some evidence has shown is that the link between the woman having more free time in the sense of being able to pick and choose her time schedules, being able to figure out what works for her, being able to like schedule in possibly like times of being able to have sex and stuff like that. All of that works to the advantage of having your wife being at home. So of course, like we're saying, this isn't something that's super easy for everyone to just up and do, but it is possibly something to aspire to, especially if you are a man in a sexless marriage who has the ability to work up within their career. So if you and your wife, y'all sit down and y'all have a conversation about this, and we're going to get into in particular how to approach this conversation a little different, because although he said that they have probably talked about it, it really depends on how you approach the situation. If you guys are really having an open, honest conversation and then working towards some solutions that you guys can actually implement, because just being in this situation and trying it, it's going to require you guys doing a lot of things that are different, because the routine of what you guys going on is clearly not helping to initiate sex. So something has to be done. But I did just want to say that just the free time and the ability to be at home and be more relaxed and less stressed, not having to deal with the hustle and bustle of life and traffic and all this other stuff, that can lead to an increase in sexual desire. So it's certainly something to take in consideration. Yeah.
Yep.
But anyways, so let's head into, did you want to go into like the other factors in particular?
Yeah, but shoot, we can.
That could contribute to a woman's sex drive.
Yep. And then age, of course. Sex drives tend to peak in the early 20s for women, and then gradually decline with age. However, there is a lot of evidence variations, and some women may experience a higher or lower sex drive at different points in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So that varies, but overall, on average, in the early 20s, women are more sexually readily available or
Easily aroused,
easy.
or
Okay.
I guess the nighttime fog. But it's easier to get aroused when you get your libido up, and often
the higher libido.
And often too, like being that y'all are in your 20s. This is more, again, to know this is probably not in reference to you all and your age until you take into some other considerations. So you're talking about your health. Good physical and mental health are extremely important for maintaining a healthy sex life. So, for example, if she says she's not able to get in the mood, or she's stressed, having depression, or even just being sick in general, those things certainly affect your libido. So it's often that you're going to have to address those things before you can really get to tackling increasing the sexual desire that, your man or woman has. Because, this is important to consider for men too. We're not just going to say that women are the only ones that may have a lower libido, because there are men that have low libidos too. So,
that's why they got Viagra.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it too, believe it or not, isn't always tied to age too. Maybe especially when it's talking about heart health for men is directly linked to their ability to get an erection.
High cholesterol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, high cholesterol. Yep, all of that. Yeah. So this goes both ways. It's really important that you maintain good physical and mental health in order for you to have a good sex life in general. So
yeah. And then relationship satisfaction. So women who are happily and satisfied in their relationships are more likely to have a high sex drive, of
Yeah.
course, than hormones. We talk about hormones a lot in the past. Changes in hormones, such as those that occur during menopause, can also affect a woman's sex drive.
Yeah. Or like I think about straight after giving birth, or maybe during menstrual cycle times. So like a woman is more likely aroused during the times where she's ovulating. Even sometimes right before menstruating, she may get a little more aroused because of the extra blood flow that's, flowing throughout the lower area. So it's just all times of the month to really take and consider too that could be affecting a woman, because that's the thing about women, our hormones aren't as even kill every month, all month like y'all are. In particular, men, when we talk about for men hormones, there are more daily, right? So they have a peak of testosterone in the morning and in the day, and then it drops towards night. So that's kind of the man cycle. But for a woman, ours is
It's
more
all over the
lunar.
place.
Yeah, it's lunar a lot more if you think of in reference to a 30-day cycle of like
That's
the
if you're
cycles of the
healthy.
moon. Right.
A lot of
Yeah.
women aren't healthy.
Yeah, and then that's again important to take in consideration, because if your hormones are what is affecting your libido, then it's super important that you look to get those regulated. So for women, if you in particular notice that your menstruation isn't as regular as it should be, or maybe you're not even getting aroused over the times of like ovulation, or certain times of the month where you usually are supposed to be aroused, hormones may be into play in that. So the hormones that affect your libido, of course, there's estrogen, proestrogen, testosterone. Now, we all make that, men and women. Of course, men make way more testosterone than we do. So there, with them having higher amounts of testosterone, of course, that drastically increases their sexual desire. But progesterone, which is mainly produced in women, that will help, get your innards lubricated. It's actually what helps contribute to the lubrication of the vagina area. So all of that, if that is in healthy function and balance within itself, then you will find that you can easily get aroused. Sometimes, thyroid issues may take into place where that's not as easy to do. So sorry to go into a little science lesson with you guys, but these are important things to really consider. And even men too. Men, if you aren't waking up with an erection as often as you should, which is, I think, every day for the most part, you should wake up with an erection. Some men, believe it or not, don't. And this may be an issue if you want to take in consideration your testosterone levels. So again, just showing it's not always the woman, but just certainly things to take in consideration when you're trying to pinpoint and figure out what could be the cause. And in particular, this is super important so that you can have a conversation on what you guys can do moving forward.
Yeah, or either have a conversation with your doctor.
Yeah.
Of course, by all means, we are not professional medical
right.
help. So don't.
And you're gonna need tests. I think you'll need tests to even figure this out. Don't try to self-diagnose. Certainly go and figure out and get the test.
Testosterone test.
Yep.
Well, they have tests for women too, estrogen tests.
Yeah. Yep. So that's certainly something to consider. And then, paying attention to your environment, any environmental hormones that may be taking a part in what you're putting into your body. If you're intaking high soy, if you're intaking just some, what they say, the birth control pills, the added estrogen, that's just another one that I can think of, added estrogen along with soy. But those are really important to consider, because sometimes that added estrogen, too much estrogen, can actually turn into testosterone. So with that, it can make you aggressive and sometimes maybe even hyper sexual in a way, where you will it just will respond differently in a woman, where she will be really, really hypersexual, which may not be what she usually is if she would, mellow out and not have so much estrogen. So it's just something really to consider, and taking all in full circle effects of the hormones you're taking in, your diet, and all of that, how that plays a part. Yeah.
Yep. So here's some tips for increasing your libido.
Yeah.
So get enough sleep, of course.
Yeah.
So we talked about that. When you are well rested, you're more likely to feel energized and interested in sex.
Yeah. So maybe in particular for this woman, maybe she might need to take a nap. Like, and when you guys get home, I don't know, or maybe like alternate of times where y'all need sleep. If you are more accustomed right now to being the one to putting the kids to bed and making dinner or whatever, then try to see if she can get some sleep one day, and then the next day she comes home and gets dinner ready and gets the kid in bed and you take a nap. Just a good way so that you guys can alternate, that you both are getting as much sleep as possible, so you can minimize the "oh, I'm too tired"
Or either she needs
excuse.
to take a vacation and get sleep,
Yeah.
or either go to the doctor and then get a doctor's note for sleep. That is a thing. You can get a doctor note, and then take medical leave or something and sleep. So
Yeah.
that is a thing. You do need sleep. Eat a
Mhm.
healthy diet. So eating a well-balanced diet will indeed help with your hormonal imbalances. So you need to make sure that you eat healthy.
Yeah, avoiding your soys. We kind of hit on this a little bit before. There are some herbs that you can add into,
And then
like,
also some herbs you shouldn't eat as
yeah,
well,
right. Some stuff that you shouldn't
like
eat. There.
lavender.
Right, and ginger, a lot of avoiding too much of that, because again, that adds added estrogen. But things like maca root is great because it's a great balancing act within the body. It's a lot of different things that you can look up to add into your diet. Just make sure you do your research on the safety of things, and certainly consider whether or not all your whole health analysis of whether or not that's something good to introduce into your diet.
Yep, and then also exercise regularly.
Yeah.
So exercise is a great way to improve your overall health and well-being.
Yeah.
And then also too, it helps to increase your libido.
Yeah.
Another thing, reduce stress. Of course, try
Mhm.
as much as much as possible to reduce the stress, because stress can have a negative impact on your libido.
Yeah. And I did want to mention that with the
Uh-huh.
exercising and reducing stress, exercising is a way to help reduce your stress. So
Hmm.
you got, yoga, and there's different, exercising routines, Pilates, whatever it is, but also take in consideration your weight and just all of that, and the impact of hormones and all of that. Because often if you are overweight, and it's related to thyroid, if it's not related to eating habits or whatever, then that's certainly an indicator of it being a hormonal imbalance. So something you really should make sure to keep in check, and really keep yourself on the healthy side, where you're doing the things where your body can really feel good and in the mood to have fun too. Certainly. So
Yep, and talk to your spouse and communicate. Communication is key in your relationship, and it is especially true when it comes to sex. So
yeah.
talk to your wife or your husband. The
Yeah.
best way to deal with sexual rejection is to talk to them,
Yeah.
and talk about how you're feeling.
Yeah.
So you let your other know that you are hurt
Yeah.
because of this, and they need to support you during
Yeah.
these times as well.
Yeah, it's super important, especially in particular for if it is a man or husband who is struggling with his wife. Be okay with being able to be open and honest about your feelings, because your wife needs to hear this. Your wife needs to hear that, not being able to have sex as often as you would like is contributing to a disconnect within your relationship. If she loves you, which I'm certain she does, she should want to do something about it and recognize that it's not um, healthy for your relationship, and want to work with you to find solutions and figure things out. But of course, talking about your libido and sexual satisfaction isn't the easiest conversation to have. So we came up with a little some little tips that you can do to actually go about this conversation that will be honest and open
And
and
productive.
and productive. Yeah, exactly. So in a sec.
Yep. So choose a time and place where you can talk without being interrupted. This can be after the kids are asleep, on a weekend getaway or
Yeah.
date night, something. Just talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just make sure that it's a good where you won't be interrupted, where you will have both the time to get out both your feelings. You're not going to feel rushed. You're not going to be interrupted. You're not going to feel the need to push off the conversation, but somewhere where you can create a safe space for each other. Because this isn't, again, the easiest conversation to have. And you want to be able to allow each other to really talk about things as much as you possibly can, until you have both feel comfortable that you guys are on a steady path to working towards a solution.
Yeah. And then start by expressing your love and appreciation for your spouse.
Yeah.
Let them know that you are attracted to them and that you want to have a healthy sex life.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's always nice to start with first acknowledging that this isn't a fight, right? You're gonna put down and not make this something that's, it's not like you're beating down on them. You're not trying to, just point out all the things that they're not doing right or anything like that. But that this is actually just a time where you love your spouse, you appreciate them, and you're happy to be with them, and maybe even throw in there like this guy wrote in that he's just frustrated. Like, be honest and be able to have this conversation and tell them like, hey, I want to have a healthier sex life with you. Let's work towards talking about whatever we think is going on. Yeah.
Yep. Be honest about your feelings, about your own libido.
Yeah.
Um, are you more interested in sex than your spouse seems?
Yeah.
So you want to explain those issues you're having. So ask your spouse their thoughts on your current sex life. So you need to make sure that all of that information is transparent, so that you all understand where you stand in regards to sex.
Yeah, it makes me wonder because he says like, oh, they have talked about it many times, and she just says she doesn't get in the mood. So this is why I say that I don't know if you're being as super transparent about your feelings as you possibly could be, because your wife should feel some sense of urgency. Believe it or not, you need to create a sense of urgency, because it's something that's going on. Don't casually have this conversation like, oh, it's no big deal, oh, you're just having the conversation. No, you need to address it though like it's something very serious, and how you're feeling about it, and really get it out so that your wife knows like, hey, this is serious, and if we don't work on this, then we're going to have a bigger problem. So create that sense of urgency. Yeah. Also, another part, kind of when you hit on just asking your spouse about their thoughts, then be sure that you're sitting down and really listening to your spouse's perspective on everything. So it does seem like you've heard her out as far as saying, she doesn't get in the mood often, or that she's stressed, but, just really try to get her to open up more about, why doesn't she get in the mood too often? What are some things that would get her in the mood too often, or more often? Or what are some things that you could possibly do that she may fantasize about, in ways that get her in the mood? You just have to always go into it curious, asking questions, and please try not to take this personal, because it's very, very common for a man when his wife, kind of like we talked about before, when his wife is when the husband is experiencing sexual rejection, for him to kind of take it personal and take it in as something, help not have as high confidence as him, maybe thinking that something's wrong with him, or he's not able to turn his wife on, or his wife isn't attracted to him. Just try not to internalize anything that your wife may tell you, and instead look at it as a learning opportunity of something that you can maybe introduce within your sex life.
Right. The problem is that we don't really know what her problems are.
Yeah.
Other than what he stated is that she's stressed.
Yeah.
So just going off of that, you have to figure out ways to alleviate her stress. Although there's not a lot you can do, because a lot of this has to be done on her own.
Yeah.
So she has to figure out ways as well in order to
Right.
reduce her stress. Like, that's the reason why I said that she needs to take her vacations.
Mm-hmm.
And she needs to take those vacations often and do whatever she can to relieve her stress. It may be a medical condition or issue, or she just needs sleep, but it needs to be addressed though. So that's the only way that it's going to be better. So work together to find solutions. So there are many things that you can do to things that can affect your libido, like we stated before. And restating those, such as stress, medication, and medical conditions.
Yeah.
So once you have identified the causes of the problems, you can start working on the solution.
Yeah.
And hopefully together.
Yeah, and that's why sorry, excuse me, but that's why we were important to go over some of the reasonings before in a little bit more detail, especially when it comes to trying to take into consideration the full circle of what you guys could possibly be faced with, because that's the only way that you can really go in and identify the problem. You really have to get to the root cause of it. So it may be something that you can dig a little deeper into why she's stressed. Is it, a work relationship that's bothering her? Is it, I don't know, the drive home, whatever? Or is it like medication? all the different reasonings. It's so important to get down to the root cause of something, because if you guys are young and you've been together for years and you've never had an issue, and it doesn't seem like she's not sexually attracted to you when you are,
Yeah, they got
Mhm.
children.
Right. And when you are having sex, I love that you made mention at the end again that she is being pleased during the interaction. That is super important, because that shows that she is interested and she is engaged. She's just having a little problem getting aroused more often than you are. So it's just something that you guys want to really not look at it as she's the problem or you being the problem as the man, but more so as there just is a problem, and you guys as a team are going to come together and figure out how to solve it, because that's really all it is. It's slight mishap that you guys can really work through. But again, you do want to add a sense of urgency on it, because something that's so small would really grow to be big, especially when it comes to something as important as sex within your marriage. So,
Yep.
yeah. Also, so if you're struggling to talk to your spouse about, your low libido, definitely consider speaking to a professional. You talked about that earlier. Maybe if it's just a therapist for her, or maybe couple therapy, maybe even a therapist for you if you guys are into doing it separately and working together. Maybe just for you to work through your own insecurities or anything if you have developed them, so that they don't go and affect the relationship. It's just, therapy, you don't have to think of it as something that's only when you have something seriously wrong, but it can really be used for preventive measures as well. So certainly something to consider, because therapy can really help you communicate more effectively. If you are struggling having this conversation, and even if she's struggling having this conversation and actually verbalizing her feelings, her emotions, what's going on, speaking with the therapist can really help with that. So something really to consider. Also too, something that popped in my head, sex therapists. There are those sex mentors and like counselors. I don't know what they're called, like
Yeah, sex counselor.
yeah, like a sex counselor. Consider one of those too, or even like going
sex therapist.
or even like going to one of those like the sex rooms, or like just foreplay rooms that try to initiate and get you guys a little comfortable. It's just little ways that you can.
What is that?
Those are the rooms where they try to initiate like foreplay and trying different games and toys and stuff in a safe environment where you
I've
get to
never heard
learn
of
how
that.
to. Yeah, I've seen them on TV shows, like some couples going to doing those things. Like, it's just, I guess, a fun experience of I don't know, foreplay in a different room area. I don't know if anybody has actually had experience with these and they have worked and help your marriage or your relationship. Enter into the comments, because if somebody sees that, it can really help utilize that tool as well. Yeah,
Yep.
overall though, you just really want to develop strategies for improving your sex life.
Yep. So here are some additional tips for improving sexual satisfaction in marriage. Make time for sex, of course. If it comes down to it, then you have to schedule it. So it's important to make sure that sex is a priority in your relationship. Schedule regular times for sex, even if you're not feeling particularly aroused.
Yeah.
This is very important, because if you are grown adults with children, it is very hard for you all to have sex.
Yeah.
Remember the time when you didn't have children and how spontaneous sex was. It's no longer that way when you have children, especially if you have more than one child and they're grown and they're walking around eating all of your food. So just be mindful
knocking
of that.
on your door.
Right, knocking on your doors and knocking down your door. Just be mindful of that you often at times, older adults or married with children, you have to schedule sex.
Yeah, and I wanted to go back to that part, because she says even if she doesn't get into the mood, we talked about this earlier and I really wanted to say it again, just because it's so important. It is a priority in your relationship to have sex. Even if you are not in the mood right away, one of the beautiful things about even just putting the priority on having sex in your relationship is that you're supposed to work for ways that if your man is sexually aroused, then you work on ways of getting yourself ready, prepared to get sexually aroused as well. Even if you tell him certain things that you would like him to do, or even if you need to self prep yourself, don't be shy about figuring out ways that you can arouse yourself, what you like, what you're interested in. It's super natural, especially within a marriage, to try to figure out how you guys can please each other and what feels good to you. That's the only way that you're going to know what works and what doesn't. And you really do have to prioritize it, because if not, you're going to just be like, oh, next week. And then next week turns into the week after that, and the week after that, and then the week after that. And then before you know it, y'all have gone months without having any sex because you haven't prioritized it. And that is a recipe for disaster, like plain and simple. It's never good to have a sexless marriage. That's not even what a marriage is about. That's the connection. That's supposed to be the one intimate act that you have with your spouse, that connection that no one else will know, no one else witnesses, just a deeper bond of knowing your spouse. So it's super important. Super important.
Yeah. Like my wife said, experience and try different things, positions, toys, activities,
Yeah.
foreplay. The more you experience, the more that you experiment, the more then you will enjoy, especially with your spouse.
Yeah.
So be open. Also be open to feedback as well. Don't be afraid to tell your spouse what you like and what you don't like. The more feedback you give, the better.
Yeah.
The experience can be more enjoyable and pleasing to you.
Yeah. Yeah. That open line of communication is super,
Yeah.
super important.
Especially for young couples. You should be very, sex might be something that's kind of you don't want to talk about it, you just want to do it.
Yeah.
But it's more enjoyable if you actually talk about it, especially before you do it. So talk about the things that you enjoy, things you want to try. Don't be scared to talk about those things.
Yeah. Yep, certainly. And then also focus on intimacy, building natural intimacy within your relationship. And of course, remember, sex is much more than the physical act. So, like my husband just mentioned, talking about sex, that is a form of foreplay. So, throughout the day, if she is at work and you're at work and you guys are thinking about each other, send each other that text of, hey, I'm thinking about you. Take it a little further and, initiate some, freaky talk. Who knows? Like, just look for ways that you can connect with your spouse throughout the whole day that will help to build that intimacy, so that when the nighttime comes, maybe you guys have a lingering urge that you've been nurturing all day to want to be together even more because of that.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I think that was pretty much it.
Yep, and that's it.
For the most part, I really think if you follow all of these tips, you can really improve your sexual intimacy and strengthen your marriage. It's super important. Super, super important.
And then, I've said this before, that is important, especially for men, prostate health.
Yeah.
Sex is very important for prostate health. It's no joke. I mean, helps stave off, cancer, prostate cancer. So, that alone is a great benefit for having sex in your marriage, other than just keeping you all together and keeping you all closer together. So
yeah, and the benefits for women too. It improves your mood. It makes you. It just really makes you enjoy just your connection with your spouse. So not only would you get that boost of hormones, the endorphins that you really love, but it just also helps get the juices flowing of the love between you and your spouse. So that's always something nice to have, and it's something you should prioritize, certainly, even when you don't feel like it.
Yeah. Well, that's go ahead. You got something to say?
I always think when I say that, though, I always want to make sure to throw in the idea that it's not like you're just letting your spouse take advantage of you. It's one thing to enjoy, and knowing that your spouse enjoys having sex with you and you willingly want to allow that connection with your spouse, than just being like, oh, I don't feel like doing it, but I'm going to do it anyway. The energy is so different from that. So it's really important that your perspective is not on like the negative, oh, I don't really want to do this, but I'm gonna just do it anyway so he don't cheat on me or whatever the case may be. Just having that perspective would really dampen the whole experience. So certainly just think of it as an opportunity of, I may not be as aroused right now, but I do enjoy this experience with my spouse. So let me start by kissing. Let me start by touching. Let me start by allowing my spouse to, interact with me, and certainly taking consideration not telling him no so many times in particular when I was thinking about this one. So yeah.
All right.
That's all.
All right. Well, with that being said, thank you all for joining us tonight. I hope this message reaches you and you find some use for it. So if you can, please like, share, and subscribe our videos. And until next time, Blueprint family, thank you. Peace.
Woo! I'm tired. It's nice of you.